Hello everyone, I'm Felix Lenz, and today I'm happy to show you one of my most recent works that I have developed in the context of my pre-diploma at Studio Design Investigations. Climate change, to start with, is a phenomenon massively disrupted in time and space. As the philosopher Timothy Morton put it, we have created things that we can hardly understand, let alone control, let alone make sensible political decisions about. This inherent complexity seems to paralyze our understanding of large and long-term correlations appearing in conjunction with climate change. With Political Atmosphere, I built an experiential installation that breaks with our state of paralysis by making some of these correlations tangible again. Anyway, I'm happy to start by giving you a bit of an insight into the research I did. Well, I built on the research of a British meteorologist called Lewis Fry Richardson. He's best known for being the first man to forecast the weather by means of a numerical process. After experiencing the tragedies of the First World War, he shifted his attention to the field of peace research. Richardson theorized that the same methods he used for the prediction of atmospheric turbulences could be applied to predict political turbulences like conflicts and war. While he unfortunately didn't come to a conclusive result during his lifetime, I further developed this hypothesis in the context of the Anthropocene. I ended up tracing the connections between flight turbulence, climate change, and war. In the last few years, a growing body of research observed a strong correlation between climate change and socio-political phenomena. The IPCC report already stated in 2007 that even modest increases in average annual temperature could result in 25,000 more serious and deadly assaults per year in the United States alone. Nevertheless, scientists are still unable to explain the underlying mechanisms constituting this correlation. This is in part due to the nonlinear and chaotic properties that are inherent to meteorological systems, such as atmospheric turbulences. And as I went on further investigating the complexity of this dependency, I depicted a speculative, yet scientifically informed concatenation of seemingly unrelated circumstances. Like Richardson before, I started by studying the idiosyncrasies of a phenomenon called clear air turbulence. It occurs when bodies of air moving at widely different speeds meet. While much studied, particularly where passenger aircraft operate, it remains almost impossible to predict. Clear air turbulence increases significantly when carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are rising. This also means that aviation, as one of the major CO2 emitters, is inflicting turbulence on itself. But unfortunately, the repercussions of anthropogenic activities reach even further. Small-scale phenomena like clear air turbulence are inherently bound to larger systems like the jet stream. The jet stream could be understood as the world's aerial superhighway. In turn, it affects the occurrence of extreme weather events worldwide. A growing community of scientists claim those climatic phenomena to be major contributors to events like the Syrian civil war. In part, the Syrian war was caused by a drought, one of the worst the country had seen in over 900 years. As the complexity of this relationship is impossible to quantify, I wanted to capture this understanding in a more visceral way. To create a sense of urgency of action, I built and tested several mock-ups, stimulating different senses. This included recording very low-frequency soundscapes and breaking concrete slabs with a massive gear-driven metal cylinder. At last, I ended up designing an experiential installation that employs the aircraft as a representative agent of pollution. I'm using open data received from aircrafts as an input for the installation. With the antenna, I can track the aircraft's position, speed, altitude, and heading in real time. I paired the data with a mechanical set of gears. The current air traffic density translates into the speed of the gears and is continuously adapted to the flight count. The gears are meant to visualize the slow violent process each aircraft slowly accelerates. When a certain threshold is passed, the gears will switch a trigger and activate the motor. The tipping point is reached and the siren starts howling. Well, and finally, in terms of production, the installation is an assembly of several hundred parts, many of them manufactured with high precision. In the process, I obviously had to combine several production techniques which included CNC milling, 3D lasering, water jetting, laser cutting, welding, 3D printing, molding, and the list is even longer. Also used several custom scripts running on 2 Raspberry Pis for the data handling. Anyway, I'm happy to now demonstrate a short teaser of my installation so you can experience it yourself. Enjoy. While you most likely could feel the more visceral parts of the installation, I hope you could still kind of get a sense of what it could be like. And anyway, I invite you to come over when the installation is then finally exhibited in real when Corona is over. But in conclusion, I also just want to say that aviation is certainly just one among many ways of how we colonize our atmosphere. Anyway, lately, in times of COVID-19, flight traffic has seen an immense drop around the world. While this certainly is a calamity for certain corporations, a crisis also carries an immense potential. So let's make use of this momentum together and stand in for a politics meeting more than human demands. Thank you. And at this point, I also want to give a big thank you to our studio team for all the lovely support and the feedback, and of course all my friends without whom this project would definitely not have been possible. So thank you all for this, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, hope to see you all soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. It's a real pleasure It's a real pleasure to be here. Just looking at the timing of everything, but I'm delighted that you are able to join us for this live program of Felix Lenz's Political Atmosphere project. Thanks, Felix, for this incredible work and for sharing it at the Angewandte Festival. I am Anab Jain. I am course leader and professor at Design Investigations or Industrial Design 2 at the University of Applied Arts, Vienna. Um, Felix, I wanted to start by asking you what was the inspiration that led you to think about this rather challenging project?
Indirectly in previous projects, I have already been dealing with climate change as a topic, and I always felt like this disruption in time and space kind of paralyzes our ability to act upon climate change, and because it's so we can't really perceive how climate change affects us, because it might affect multiple generations after us, and also if we act in the here and now, it might take effect somewhere completely remotely on another side of the globe.
Yeah.
And to make this and then for that part, I took a lot of inspiration in the literature of Timothy Morton and also Bruno Latour, which has been an inspiration also for other projects of mine. And more in specific, I, as I also mentioned in the intro already, I built on the research of this British meteorologist that passed away, I think in 1953.
Yeah.
He's called Louis Fry Richardson, and interestingly, he was acting in the middle ground of meteorology and also politics, as he spent the first half of his life doing a lot of research about turbulences and meteorological systems, and how those systems kind of interact, how energy in those small little whirls is then passed on to bigger whirls and affects huge global systems like the jet stream, for example. And then he, in the second half of his life, he experienced the First World War and all the tragedies that come with a war. And he realized, he kind of wants his insight, all the insights he gained during the research he did in meteorology, he wanted to apply in the field of peace research. And tried to figure out if there's a way to predict turbulences, political turbulences, like he did with building the first weather forecast that back then was also computed, but in a more analog way, with the human beings being the computers.
Sure.
Which is now all handled by big data and computational chips.
Yeah. And so it's really fascinating that he was already trying to find these interconnections. Is the bit around climate change something that you are speculating on, or is there evidence to suggest that such changes in the climate have resulted in conflict?
Well, there's quite definitely lots of evidence. There's lots of literature, and also several scientists already built on this research and try to make a point in, okay, there is a connection between climate change and socio-political phenomena. The issue there, though, is that it's kind of hard and non-linear to understand the evolution of this thing, and how the mechanisms in between kind of act or work, because it's a chaotic system. It's a nonlinear system, and we will never be able to fully understand the scope of the interaction of meteorological systems with socio-political phenomena. And so this kind of hindered scientists also from making a very clear point in saying this is connected, because obviously in nature there is nothing such as a super A to B linear direction or correlation.
And is that something, I think that's where the power of design, of art, of poetry of your installation comes in, that something that scientists can't do is evoke this kind of an emotional response through poetry, in this kind of poetic liminal ways. So where do you think that your role in bringing this conversation into the public domain comes in? Is, and how do you imagine, this lingering thought, there isn't something for people to act on, but it really is emotionally triggering. And so how do you feel that what you've done will get people to think differently, as opposed to what is out there in terms of scientific information?
Mm. Well, as you mentioned, the information is already out there. I mean, I made
Yeah,
a very clear case of it's a bit of a speculative case also.
yeah,
It exists, but it's not, of course, not the only path we could go into. It's more of a representation. And I think my role as a designer is to make this connection more tangible or more experiential in a visual way.
yeah.
Because by reading those correlations or trying to understand the scientific facts about it, we like we don't get that far. I mean, we know that climate change is an issue since years or tens of years already, and still we fail to act upon this
Mm.
information. And that's why I also chose to chose this quite I don't know, massive sound installation that really goes
Yeah,
through your body. Actually, I mean, you can
yeah,
feel it if you stand in this room. Unfortunately, the vibe of this can barely be, understood through video, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
But
It is
it
very
really
loud.
goes through your body, and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Is it too loud? I mean, it's just when I've experienced the installation myself, and we all had to wear the, these ear
Mm,
protecting headphones. And is this intentional? Is this kind, you are kind of in this very edge between what's acceptable as an installation, or whoever will host you in whatever space. You are kind of in this border of, what's acceptable from people's health point of view. And have you thought about these kind of very specific challenges around your installation?
I mean, yeah, definitely did. I mean, I tried already, as I showed earlier before, a bit, just a glimpse. I did several mock-ups and experiments before ending up with this specific sound installation. Like I
Yeah,
hadn't, it was never like the clear thought from the beginning on to build a siren,
sure. Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
So I tried several, central interactions and
yeah,
stuff that kind of stimulates you. And
yeah.
if you're coping with a topic like war and political conflicts, and it's like really hard to make uh, to act on the right level, or to find the right balance of like not being ridiculous, or not being, to find the right balance of kind of giving a glimpse of
Mm,
the emotional state it should represent, without being
mm,
I don't know, too whatever, cynical, or too
yeah.
uh, you know what I mean. So I think the balance in this case was the challenge. Also, it's of course it's not an easy thing to exhibit, but I think it's definitely um, if it's definitely manageable. It's yeah.
Sure. And where would you like to see it? And who would you like to have it to experience? Like, who are the people who should experience it, and where?
Um, well, phew. I think there is no specific target audience, because it should kind of it's directed to like all people out there that I don't know, can get in touch with or that could see the installation. I
Mm,
mean, it's. I was thinking about also putting it on a public open ground, which could be interesting, but on the other hand, hardly possible, because of the
yeah,
the sound is just
too
uh,
loud.
too loud and too
Yeah. Yeah.
piercing, I guess.
Mhm.
And So yeah, it might be exhibited at the Vienna Design Week, quite likely actually later this summer.
Well, in that case,
Um,
I would suggest most people, if they can, to go and have a look at it in person because it's a completely different experience. Eh, and I think with that, I would like to kind of draw close to this conversation. Thank you, Felix, for this work and for sharing it at the festival. And thank you, everyone who've taken the time to join us today. I hope you're enjoying everything that's going on. Incredible amount of work that everybody has done in this very difficult period. But thank you, and thanks, Felix.
Thanks also from my side for the possibility to show you and all the support from the studio team and my friends, obviously,
Yeah,
to make
sure.
the project possible. Thanks.
Thank you.